Was only 20 years when she was tried and sent to prison for the murder of her roommate Meredith Kircher. Amanda and Kircher were exchange students who were studying in Perugia, Italy. While Meredith was from Britain, Amanda was from the United States. A few weeks after they started living together, Amanda met Rafael Solicito, and the two started dating. Little did they know, this relationship would be the beginning of the end. On November 1st, 2007, Amanda returned from her boyfriend's house to discover that her apartment had been broken into with windows smashed and blood on the floor. When Amanda couldn't find her roommate, she called the police, and not long after, 2 officers showed up. Still, these were postal police officers who had only investigated postal crimes. They had no experience in murder investigations. The officers entered the apartment and kicked down the door. It didn't take long before they discovered Meredith's body covered in a bloody duvet. Amanda and her boyfriend were taken into custody and were interrogated for 5 days. Eventually, the police arrested Amanda and Rafael and announced that they had killed Meredith. Despite the lack of physical evidence linking Amanda and Rafael to the crime scene, she and her boyfriend were sent to 26 and 25 years in prison, respectively. However, investigations continued, and DNA evidence taken from the scene of the murder revealed that another person was in the apartment at the time of the murder. Rudy Guede, a friend of the Italian neighbors living below Amanda's apartment, was arrested. His history of burglaries led credence to more investigations, and his bloody fingerprints on Meredith's possessions confirmed his involvement. Guede was sentenced to 30 years in prison, but it didn't end here for Amanda. Later, it was discovered that the evidence presented in the first trial that led to Amanda's imprisonment was unreliable and almost fabricated to make her a scapegoat. For a case that went so viral, using inconsistent evidence to jail someone was appalling, but fabricating evidence gets much crazier in the case of David Cam.
These people making up this time.
I'm telling you, people are confused. The time element is off.
This is David Cam. David was an Indiana state cop who was arrested and sent to prison for the murder of his family. The policeman returned home from a basketball game in September of 2000 to discover that his wife, Kimberly, and 2 children, Bradley and Jill, had been murdered in his garage. After a period of confusion where he tried CPR on the deceased Bradley and checked if any of them survived, David gave up and called the police.
United States Police Radio, Patrice, can I help you?
Patrice, it's Dave Cam. Let me talk to Post Command right now.
Okay, he's on another line.
Now, let me talk to Post Command.
Hold on.
Dave, get everybody out here to my house now. Okay, all right. My wife and my kids are dead. Get everybody out here to my house.
Go to Dave Cam's house now.
Everything's gonna be okay, all right? We're gonna get everything's not okay. Get everybody out here now.
They're coming. Go to Dave Cam's house now.
Okay.
Police investigations, crime scene photography, and a phone bill allegedly showing that David was at the scene of the murder during the time of the murder led to his arrest. The prosecution discovered that David was cheating on his wife, and the police held on to that as a motive for him killing his family. David was charged with the murder of his family and sent to prison. The prosecution pointed to 8 bloodstains on David's shirt.
Blood on your shirt, and now have a DNA analyzed. This is the presumptive test that it is high-velocity blood spread. It's scientific documentation. The only way that comes on is from low back, low out from a gunshot.
That is supposed to be on my t-shirt that I played ball in. So
And claimed it was blood splatter from when he was cleaning up the scene after committing the murders. However, further analysis of the bloodstains revealed that the prosecution's theory was unlikely and that the bloodstains were the usual separation of water and blood when exposed to air. Despite no concrete evidence of his involvement, David was sent to prison and spent 13 years behind bars. But it didn't end there. His case was brought to court a second time, and DNA evidence on a sweatshirt left in the garage revealed the presence of Charles Bonnet. Bonnet was a convicted felon who was convicted of attacking several women. He was known as the Shoe Bandit because of his foot fetish. Bonnet denied any wrongdoing, but his DNA was scattered on the feet and shoes of David's wife and all around the crime scene.
Somehow that sweatshirt got there. Your sweatshirt. You explain to me how it got there.
I have no idea.
It shows up at a crime scene, not laundered, not washed. If it had went through the Salvation Army drop box, that would have been a clean sweatshirt. Your DNA, chances are, probably wouldn't have been on there. But it is.
David was tried 3 times and was acquitted in the last trial after it was shown that the evidence used to convict him was not credible. Additionally, Credible evidence and testimonies showed that Bonet was responsible for the murders and was sentenced to 225 years. David sued the state for a wrongful conviction and was awarded more than $4 million in damages. Losing your family and being wrongfully jailed for it due to false evidence is terrible. However, being executed for a crime you didn't even commit is horrendous. But that was the lot of Cameron Willingham.
I cried, "Daddy, Daddy." When I woke up, the whole house was in smoke.
This is Cameron Todd Willingham. Cameron was executed in Texas in 2004 for allegedly setting a fire that killed his 3 young daughters.
I cried, "Daddy, Daddy." When I woke up, the whole house was in smoke.
In December 1991, a fire broke out in the Texas family home of Cameron Todd Willingham, resulting in the death of his 3 daughters, 1-year-old twins, Carmen and Cameron, and 2-year-old Amber Louise. Willingham was the only person at home at the time of the fire and was charged with their murder. The prosecution argued that Willingham had set the fire intentionally and presented evidence to support their case. One of the main pieces of evidence used against Willingham was the testimony of fire investigators. They claimed that the fire was started with the help of a liquid accelerant, pointing to burn patterns on the floor. Recent investigations discovered that these burn patterns did not show the use of a liquid accelerant and could have been caused by other factors.
When you actually look at the burn pattern that they drew, and then you look at where the windows are, windows furnish ventilation to a fire.
Additionally, the investigators had no real experience or training in fire investigation, making their testimony not just questionable, but unreliable. What happens next is shocking. Another piece of evidence presented by the prosecution was the testimony of Johnny Webb, a convicted informant who claimed that Willingham had confessed to him about starting the fire. However, Webb was known to be untrustworthy and had a history of providing false testimony in exchange for favors from law enforcement. As if that wasn't bad enough, it was later revealed that the prosecutor had withheld evidence from the defense that could have helped Willingham's case. This evidence included a report from a seasoned fire expert who had examined the scene and concluded that there was no evidence of arson. Despite the questionable evidence used to convict him, Cameron Todd Willingham was charged with murder in January 1991. He was offered a life sentence if he pleaded, but he refused, insisting he was innocent.
Chances of introducing reasonable doubt are slim to none in your professional opinion. Of course, you'd rather have him accept a life sentence and save his life.
Cameron was executed in February 2004 at just 36. However, modern analysis of the evidence presented at his trial has shown that he was indeed innocent. Due to unreliable evidence, an innocent man lost his life. But what about fabricated evidence that almost ruined the lives of 4 people in Illinois, known as the Ford Heights Four?
I am sorry to these defendants personally and on behalf of the criminal justice system.
The Ford Heights Four is a group of 4 young men, Willie Range, Vernil Jimerson, Kenneth Adams, and Dennis Williams, who were falsely accused and imprisoned for the murders of Lawrence Lionberg and Carol Schmall in Ford Heights, Illinois. 4 African-American men from Ford Heights, Illinois, were wrongfully convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison without parole. The evidence against the Ford Heights Four was unreliable and fabricated. No physical evidence tied the 4 men to the crime. Instead, the case relied heavily on the testimony of a key witness, Paula Gray, who claimed to have seen the 4 men commit the murder. However, it was later discovered that the police coerced Gray into giving false testimony. She later recanted her statement, testified that she was threatened by police, and was offered leniency in her perjury case in exchange for her testimony. But it didn't just end there. In addition, the prosecution relied on the testimony of David Jackson, a jailhouse informant, who claimed that one of the defendants had confessed to the murder while in jail. However, this informant was known as a liar and had a history of providing false testimony in exchange for reduced sentences. The Ford Heights Four case was filled with systemic racism undertones and discrimination. For instance, the prosecution prevented all black jurors from the trial, even though the defendants were black and had been accused of allegedly murdering 2 white people. This jury arrangement created a biased environment. The 4 men were subjected to a racially charged trial. The prosecution played on the jurors' fears and prejudices to secure a conviction. Additionally, the defense lawyers were ineffective and failed to challenge the prosecution's weak case. The result of these lies towards innocent people is disgusting. The Ford Heights Four case is a tragic example of how innocent people can suffer due to unreliable and false evidence. Vernil Jimerson and Dennis Williams were sentenced to death. Willie Rangy was sentenced to life imprisonment, and Kenneth Adams was handed a 75-year jail term. These innocent men spent over 2 decades in prison for a crime they did not commit. It wasn't until 1996 that they were exonerated and released from prison. 3 female students from the Northwestern University Medill School of Journalism investigated the case without pay and uncovered DNA evidence that proved that the 4 men were innocent. In 1999, the Fort Heights 4 were paid $36 million in damages, and the case led to a temporary stop to the death penalty in Illinois. If these cases make you feel